as well as the wind, putting it all together, does that mean we can become self-sufficient?
Yeah, and one thing that we're very excited about is if you combine the wind energy, the solar, the current hydro energy, which provides about 55% of the power to Belize, and you combine that with the biomass, which is about 10% right now, Belize could be the very first country in the world that's 100% run on renewable energy.
Well, I didn't think of it in that context.
And think about that. think about the marketing, the publicity, the technology that comes to the country, the education, additional investments that might be triggered by having such a status.
Yes, true.
So there's a lot that can come out of this.
Belize is focusing on ecotourism, and this will be like a big step in that direction as well.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, at the forum today, the Renewable Energy Forum that was held today, I heard, and I was not aware actually, that in fact we have a sort of mini operations, wind energy operations in Belize. I wasn't aware that COSESNA had this operations going up in, I think he said in Baldebeacon.
Baldebeacon, yeah.
Yes.
Pine Ridge.
In Pine Ridge, Mountain Pine Ridge area there. I was impressed.
And the intake, or the reason, is because at that time they needed a lot of power up there in the mountains, and there was no network or no accessibility for them to any source of power.
Yes.
And the project there is small enough that they could really work with batteries and store the power for the local facility. Yeah.
Correct. But picking up on that point, how really would it work, in the sense that you made the point that you can't store it.
Right.
Yeah,
you cannot store the wind, and once it's gone, it's gone.
Well,
you have to wait for another gust of wind to come again.
Yeah,
well, I think Frick made a good point a few minutes ago. That project that we envision is a 30 turbine wind project, and it would produce enough power to supply about 1/3 of the power currently being used by Belize.
Wow.
And the project would, in the long term, would be able to export power when we're producing too much power. For instance, at night, if the wind is blowing very consistently at night and there's not a lot of energy being utilized by the Belizean people because everybody is asleep, we need to export the power. We need to get rid of it. So we could send it to our neighboring countries. And at times when we need more power, and let's say the wind is low and there's not very much water from rain, and the hydro dams are not producing efficiently, then we can import power from the neighboring countries. So it's a way for Belize to work together with the neighbors in Central America to form almost an integrated energy web.
Yes.
And so we can all work together.
All right. So effectively, we would not be able to store it. You have to just get rid of it as it's created.
You kind of store it on the network. That is the whole idea, that if the network is big enough, the power can be stored only on the network. But the network in Belize on itself is too small. I mean, in Belize, if you look at power networks like they are integrated in Europe or in Mexico or even whole Central America, Belize is at this moment a little bit on its own. And so it's the same thing in neighboring countries where they have production from diesel plants or natural gas plants. They can a lot more regulate, but if they have wind power as well, they take that as it comes. And it can be stored on the network.
All right. What we're going to do, we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, I would like us to discuss the benefits. Why go through all this and hope that the wind blows? So we ask that you stay with us. We will be right back. We'll take a short break.
This UDP administration believes in a government that works with the people, because together as one, we can achieve great things. As long as we are joined in common purpose, our journey moves forward and our future is hopeful. One people, one government, one Belize.
The Department of Transport hereby advises the commuting public, bus operators, drivers, and conductors that it is unlawful for buses to be operated with more passengers than the seating capacity and license allows. The public is also advised that the road service permit requires bus owners to provide a backup bus if there are more persons waiting at the terminal or at designated bus stops.
The Department of Transport will soon embark on a campaign to vigorously enforce the no-standing law, and persons who get on a bus that already has its lawful capacity of passengers will be taken off at checkpoints. Bus operators, drivers, and conductors will be dealt with according to the law. Persons who travel as standees are also breaking the law and are liable as well.
The Department of Transport enforcement personnel cannot break the law themselves by allowing an overcrowded bus to continue on its way. The cooperation of the commuting public is hereby requested in order to avoid expense and inconvenience. Let's all obey the law and bring good order into the bus transit system. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Transport.
Travelers Liquor's always there. Have some fun, please your taste buds with a gold award-winning one-barrel rum. Try and liquor, you decide, or the refined cashew wine. Travelers Liquor's always there. Travelers Liquor's always there. Yeah.
If you're just joining us, we want to remind you that you're watching The Real Deal, where we provide information on projects, developments, and other investments taking place within the country. And tonight we're talking about wind energy. A reminder again that the show repeats on Sundays at 11 a.m. on Wave TV and at 5 p.m. on Channel 7. Miss Norika Gamero.
Yes.
We have Frick De Mayo and Boris Mansfeld. Once again, thank you all for joining me. Before we went there, we just touched briefly on the strategy for Belize and the direction we are going in. And I think probably before I get into the benefits, maybe we could say what is the strategy so that the public will be able to see how the benefits that come from wind ties into the strategy that we have for Belize at the end of the day. So maybe we can just touch on some of the key points of the strategy, the Belize strategy in terms of energy.
There's a couple of main points here. The Ministry of Energy, Science and Technology and Public Utilities has come up with a strategic plan for 2012 to 2017 to address economic, sustainable development for Belize. And a lot of it is related to energy, especially renewable energy.
Yes.
And they had 5 key points. One point was to improve energy efficiency and conservation by at least 30% by 2033. They also wanted to reduce the country's dependency on fossil fuel by 50%.
50%?
I'm sorry, by 50%.
Wow.
And they also wanted to triple the amount of energy that's produced by biomass sources. And they also wanted Belize to become an exporter of energy by 2020. And the final point, which I feel is very important, is that the ministry really wants to incorporate more education and technology into the public and private sector and to get the country more high-tech so that they can compete more internationally and globally in the marketplace.
That's a very good point. And in fact, I wouldn't want to lose a point. So even before we go to the benefits, because what I'm going to ask you still has to be one of the benefits from where I'm concerned. What will you gentlemen in doing this project anticipate you can put in place to have skills transfer where Belizeans can learn about this and understand it to move us forward into the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of the benefits is the education and employment. There's gonna be a tremendous growth if Belize at a certain moment is gonna 30% of the power that's now imported is gonna produce itself.
Yes.
I mean, this is gonna require a lot of people, you know, monitoring this power,
Okay.
extra grid investments, you know, expansion of the grid, of the power lines, of the substations. There's a lot to do at this moment. And our teams, I think, will bring a lot of knowledge into this country, because there's going to be a lot of local engineering companies. We're going to do the whole startup of the production.
Wow.
If you look at the specific thing, how a wind farm is done, all the setup, the building, the construction is all in the first 18 months, 12 to 18 months. But then they switch on the button and it goes. And it needs to be mainly monitored. It's mainly the power that needs to be handled afterwards. So in this first 18 months, our teams will be here, but afterwards it will be Belizeans, you know, and BEL and whole teams around that need to maintain it for another 20 years. So we will be training a lot of local, highly, you know, qualified people. It will be engineers, technicians that will all learn, and that we have to make like wind power specialists.
Yes.
It's unlike any other project, you know. Sometimes we tend to get more of the lower skill labor, you know, in investment. In this type of project, it's more of the high-end skill labor.
Beautiful.
And that's the part where the transfer of knowledge, the information, the technology that they will bring to the Belizean people.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can put a price on something like that.
No, and I think it's very much needed. I think we do
Absolutely.
need to develop jobs at the higher end.
Yeah, and it's a growth process. It's gonna start off with, say, 30 turbines and eventually go up and up, and
Yeah.
it's something that's not just one of those one phase projects.
Yes.
It's something that has a long-term future, a long-term benefits.
Yeah.
And you know, going back to the benefits, we can use labor as just one of the examples.
Yes.
And we have our strategic partner in Belgium, they have a lot of experience with wind farms and wind development. And the company that we plan to utilize for the actual turbines is a very, very sophisticated company that has been developing wind turbines for many, many years
I
in
think
Europe.
we have a set of some images with the assembly plant or
Yes,
factory
yes,
production.
yeah.
Maybe we can
It's
put
very
it up so that you
partners.
can,
Yeah, it's very-
the public can look at it at the
Yeah,
same
it's very
time.
high tech.
Yes.
And we'll be bringing that technology here to Belize. The engineering teams are scheduled to arrive pretty soon to test the grid, to do a lot of analysis. Yeah, this is one of the assembly plants in Europe, actually in Germany, that produces these wind turbines. As you can see, it's not just a little windmill that's up on a stick. It's very sophisticated, high tech,
Yeah.
and the wind energy has come a long way over the last 20 years with sophistication, technology, efficiency. It's really amazing how far they've come along.
About how heavy would you say? How tall is one of the, what we saw earlier on the image there? How
Some of them are 80 meters tall, 60 meters. The towers are very, very tall.
Yeah, it will all depend also on the location and on the specific wind site. If you put something up from these wind turbines in the mountains, or you put them like offshore in the shallow waters, you have completely different wind conditions, which require different wind turbines. But like you see, these are huge.
Yeah, you can.
what is that?
Well, that's part where the blades connect to the assembly that turns around,
okay.
and you can see you have very heavy equipment that has to lift these pieces up.
Yeah.
We would actually have to import the cranes
I
from
was just gonna
Europe.
say all of that's part of
Oh,
the
really?
The
feasibility
cranes, all that
study.
stuff has to be
Yeah.
imported, and we have to study the roads, the ports, to make sure we can ship the equipment here.
Because you have to remember the blades, imagine the roads that we have, you'd have to realize what would be the most optimal way of getting these things if it's going to have to be disassembled in parts and reassembled.
Okay.
So
What kind
all
of
that
length in blades you think you're looking at?
Depends
Yeah.
the area.
Yeah.
You have seen the people
Yeah.
walking
Yeah.
on the images.
100 feet.
About 100 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bit
And you have
different.
to transport
Easily,
to
yeah.
transport something 100 feet long,
Easily
and with
100
that kind of
feet,
weight.
150
And it's
feet,
very
yeah.
sophisticated and very fragile. You just can't, put it on the back of a truck and just go.
So all of that is, like, you see, a lot of people think the feasibility study is just the study of the wind. There's so much more behind the feasibility study.
Yes.
It's yes, one of the areas, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is the consistency of the wind.
Of course,
that's,
yeah.
that's just like one of the
One of many.
important,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
just
yeah.
one of the aspects of the feasibility
Correct.
study. The transportation of getting the things there, the grid,
Yes.
the infrastructures, the soil, how far will they have to, to secure it, things like that
Yes.
is where the team will come in and assess and find the area. And I think you guys can talk more about also, the areas that you want to look, if you're going to do onshore, offshore.
Yeah, so there's several areas. A lot of people in the past, when we were first introducing the project to Belize, a lot of people talked to us about Cosesna that was mentioned this morning, and said,
okay.
yes, they have already some wind
Yes.
turbines up, but they're like at least 20, 30 times smaller than the
what you
ones
have in
that
mind.
we have in mind. And so it's even part of all the due diligence that we need to do is even see if we can ever get those large wind turbines all the way from the production facility all the way up in the mountains.
Yes.
Because maybe the roads will not allow it. It's not something you can also just hang under a helicopter and fly it up in the mountain.
Yeah, true.
There's a lot more that will come. Maybe we're gonna have to produce roads, put new roads in place. Even maybe the harbor of Belize City will be way too small to bring those pieces in.
But with all of that, though, if we were to go through all that type of infrastructural change to facilitate the production of a wind farm, what kind of